I want to talk about something, and I have to review. To get to it, I want to say a few words about the talk I gave last month. Those of you who were here, you may remember. I was talking about the Buddha and the privilege that he lived with before he left the palace. And I was talking about how that story has always made me uncomfortable. That hearing the story about how the Buddha grew up not knowing there was poverty, old age, sickness, and death, just my very rational, logical mind had trouble holding that story because it was, in a way, it's ridiculous. It's not possible that the Buddha didn't know about old age. He saw himself aging. He saw his father aging. He knew his mother died when he was very, very young, and he was raised by his aunt. So the story always bothered me, and every Buddha's birthday, I'd have to reference that talk and feel a little bit, there's something off. And through the course of the social events that have happened between the COVID-19 pandemic and the social unrest that's been happening in the United States due to the police killing of George Floyd and then a number of other people following suit, what I came to realize, actually right in the middle of a Dharma talk, was that it wasn't that he didn't know about these things, but it was more that his privilege blinded him to them. And ultimately, he just didn't care. Your suffering was not my problem. He was pampered. He was given all the luxuries, and what anybody else had to deal with was not his concern. And in many ways, I think we can define privilege that way. When we're privileged, we don't have to think about what's happening for people who don't have the same privilege that we have. And it really, for me personally, it opened the story, and it helped me understand not only what the young boy who we now call the Buddha might have lived through, and actually he was a young boy, but he didn't leave the palace until he was about 29 years old. But not only him, but us. How whatever our privilege is, none of us are likely to be as privileged as the young boy who became the Buddha was, whose father was a king and he was expected to rule his country. Well, that's not anybody on this call tonight. That's not our situation. But each one of us has our own particularity of privilege. And that privilege prevents us from seeing. So that's the summary. So when the Dharma talk went up online, there was a comment that somebody sent. And I'm really sorry, actually, that maybe Jason took down the comment. It was up for a couple of weeks, and it was somewhat negative, I suppose, although quite respectful in this person's tone. But basically, he pleaded with me, please don't slander the three jewels. Please. And now I'm having to paraphrase because the comment isn't up anymore. But basically, it was, please don't make Buddhism into some social, societal practice. Buddhism is more about leaving home and separating and finding our true self in the context of that separation. I wish that it was up there because I'm not even giving his comment full justice. It was really a good comment. And what struck me then is that he was half right. That we do need, in some ways, moments or times of separating ourselves. And that's what retreat is about. And actually, there are practice places in the world, throughout the world, where one can go and separate themselves. And that's a legitimate practice. To me, the problem with what he was saying was he was holding his position and seeing it as the only truth. When actually, there are more than one thing can be true at the same time. And that's very difficult for our minds to hold. We're always moving towards certainty. It's this, it's not that. But to hold in our consciousness that it may be both this and that. And actually, it's never exactly this or that. Because we human beings only have the capacity to perceive what our physiology allows us to perceive. So, if I were to blow a dog whistle, which is pitched higher than the human ear can receive, none of us would hear a sound. In our definition of sound, there is no sound. But if a dog is in the vicinity, there is a sound. So we might be certain that there's no sound, but we actually only know what our senses can tell us. I was having a conversation with my nephew, who's an ecologist and a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. And as we were talking about things like this, he started going far afield. How because we only know what our senses allow us to perceive, there may be many other kinds of life forms right here, right now, that we don't perceive. So we say they are not here. But we don't know that. Anytime we're certain about something, our practice should come up. And we should question, really? Do we really know that for sure? How do I know that? Who is this person who believes they know? We talk about great doubt. Great doubt is such a fundamental practice point for us because our certainty becomes almost unconsciously strong. And we need something to tickle that certainty. And sometimes it really is humor. I know for myself, I may assert something, and then somebody says, "Are you sure?" And then I'll often say, "I was sure until you asked me. But now you raise great doubt, so I can't say for certain." So part of what we're doing with our practice is trying to find a way to have a strong enough foundation that we can live with uncertainty. Look at your own life. Take a little quick survey, even just today. What did you do to try to add certainty to your life? What did you discount because it didn't fit into the story that you hold? The truth is, there's some tension between what sometimes we call the absolute, where nothing matters, everything is always changing, and there's no fixed anything. And then the life that we find ourselves in, which has a lot of rules, it has a lot of boundaries, it has a lot of requirements of us. We wake up in the morning and we have tasks to do. That's where we find ourselves. We're incarnated into the physical world that we know of as human beings. And as practitioners, or maybe even before we became practitioners, we know there's something more. So human beings have come up with God. We don't know what God is. In the Jewish religion, you can't even name God, because if you name it, you turn it into an object. So we call this before thinking. The wide open space of not knowing, uncertainty, great doubt. The world is not what we perceive. I often, at this moment, I hold up this book, which is our koan book, and the title is "The Whole World is a Single Flower." The whole world is a single flower. Everything in this universe is one flower that is our world. And one flower, this one plant above me, is the whole universe. Each thing contains in it the whole universe. In Indian cosmology, they talk about Indra's net. Indra's net is the whole universe is connected. And at each knot on the net is a jewel. And each jewel reflects, it's a hologram. Each jewel reflects every other jewel. So on one hand, you can say each jewel is unique. And at the same time, it's a reflection of every other jewel. It's both and. You can say in some ways, each one of us lives in a particular neighborhood of Indra's net. And we connect with the things around us. We're impacted by everything around us. And that neighborhood, if our mind's not wide enough, we see that neighborhood as the whole net. And our practice is to widen and widen and widen and open to all of the experience all around us. That's our challenge. That's the challenge of our practice. Last month during Wednesday night talks, we kept coming back to what I think of as the tension between the story and no story. Each one of us has a narrative of our lives. That narrative tells us something about our lives. But what do we do with that story? And when we listen to another person's story, how do we honor the story of their life and at the same time realize that every story that's told has boundaries to it, and it leaves out what's outside the parameters of the story. So on one hand, the story helps us dive in and really perceive things on a granular level. On the other hand, by going so deeply granular, we lose the expanse of the whole. Our human mind wants to make it either or. Either we have to let go of all attachments, or we have to be attached. But the answer is somewhere fluidly including both. Some of you have heard me say this, but in my younger college days, I was very moved by the teachings of Don Juan, the books written by Carlos Castaneda. And we can get into whether any of that existed or didn't exist. But he had one saying that he used that really struck me. And he said, in each moment, in each thing that you're doing, do it as if it's the most important thing you will ever do, and at the very same time, recognize that it doesn't mean anything at all. Think about it. Each moment, how do you bring yourself to the moment in your life? Zen Master Bon Soeng used to say, when you're doing something, do it. In the old Zen talk, it would be like, if it's firewood, burn it completely. So by the time you're done, there's no more firewood. Firewood is firewood, ash is ash. Completely burn yourself up in each moment. At the same time, knowing that it's just a momentary passing phenomena that will change. And in the next moment, we need to burn ourselves up again. So how do we engage with life in such a way that we're present, alive, available, and giving, at the same time knowing that we don't know the whole story? It actually doesn't really matter. Except right now, it's the most important thing. It's very hard to hold these two poles in our minds and our hearts. And yet that is our practice. We say Buddhism is the middle way. If you err on the side of emptiness, you fall off this way. If you err on the side of the particularity of the moment we're in, we fall off to this side. How do we stay upright and include them both? As I was thinking of this talk, I was going through some of it during meditation, I was reminded of a lyric from the singer Donovan back in I think this was a song in the 1960s, but I think he said something like, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. There is a mountain and there is no mountain. That's two sides of the same coin. Depending on circumstances, depends on which side you're dealing with. When we're in practice, when we're in our meditation, we're trying to bring our attention down into our lower abdomen, creating the stability and the foundation to sit in the vast unknowing, to sit with impermanence, to be present to the moving phenomena which we don't even know if they exist or not. We say something exists or something does not exist, but do we really know? How do we know what we know? We all have these very strong opinions, ideas, and beliefs. That's what human beings do. But how do we know it's true? So be careful. Question everything. We also find that we're incarnated in this material world. Each one of us is being held up by some kind of floor underneath us. That floor is likely held up by some beams. Those beams are likely held up by some posts. Some of those posts sit on a foundation that is dug a couple of feet, maybe 3 or 4 feet, and if you live in a place where there's frost, it's probably dug below the frost line. The earth is holding us up. But what's holding up the earth? The earth is being held up by the gravitational force of the sun. The sun is affected by the gravitational forces around it. Just this week, I saw something on the internet that said astronomers are discovering there's a kind of frequency where there's a pattern to some messages that they're receiving that come from outside our solar system. They might actually be coming outside of our galaxy. Or maybe it's probably within our galaxy, it's so big. The point is, we don't understand. We don't know. And yet, right now, I need to speak to you. Right now, you need to be open. Right now, you can perhaps feel the breeze coming in. Right now, your legs might be getting a little bit tired. What is this? So, I want to conclude with the Eightfold Path. On one side of this equation, the Buddha came out of his intense practice experience and he said, I have a path for you to follow. I discovered that if you follow this way, you also can attain something that I understand now after my deep practice, which was me and this universe is one thing. And in each particular moment, there is a way for us to attend to the moment that will bring release from suffering. The Four Noble Truths talk about the reality of suffering. The fourth Noble Truth says the Eightfold Path is our way out of suffering. And I opened up the Compass of Zen to get a list of the Eightfold Path, and I see that I have separated them. The Eightfold Path begins with right view. And I have read that when you attain right view, you attain the whole Eightfold Path. Right view gets to really the point that I've been talking about here. Not knowing, not resting in certainty, being aware of the fact that there are things outside of our awareness. Right view allows us to see clearly. Sometimes I describe right view as if we take off our personality glasses and then our eyes can see clearly. What is this right now? Letting go of our attachments, letting go of our beliefs, being able to perceive things as they are. And then the Buddha gets into how do I live my life moment to moment to support my practice? So the second noble truth, the second of the Eightfold Path is right thought. How do you keep your mind? Are you attentive to the content and quality of what's happening in your thoughts and feelings? How do you work with those thoughts? How do you become aware of it and then perceive the way your thoughts control and trap you? If you believe your thoughts are real, or maybe more importantly, you are your thoughts, you're reducing yourself to a very small piece of who you are and what you are. So pay attention to your thinking. Notice, how am I reacting? You've seen me do this. Each one of you perceives these beads immediately. And then you name them. Naming is a thought. And then we have an opinion about them. Opinions are a thought and feeling. Then we have a thought or a feeling about our opinion. And we live our lives in the outer rings of this experience rather than in the direct experience. just this. And then maybe we use them. So pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to your feelings. Use them as a gate for enlightenment. Then the Buddha moves into right speech. Not only do you have to watch your thoughts, but your thoughts lead to speech. Be careful what comes out of this mouth. I don't know about you, but I know for me, much of the difficulty in my life arises out of this hole. Unskillful speech. Not being clear of what I have to say, and speaking in a way that rather than bringing wisdom, love, and compassion in the world, brings hurt and pain and more suffering. There's a calligraphy hanging at the Providence Zen Center which says, you make, you get. The quality of your speech has a lot to do with the quality of your life. Then the Buddha moves on to right action. So first there's perception, then he went to thoughts, then he went to speech, which is a kind of more condensed version of thoughts, and now he's moved to action, which is an even more condensed version of our speech. It's how these thoughts and misperceptions turn into suffering. And at each step, if we can use our awareness and our love and our compassion, rather than creating more messes, we can create more healing, more love, more wisdom, more inclusion. And then finally, on the fifth of the Eightfold Path is right livelihood. Now we're into what do we actually do day in and day out? How do we live our life? How is it that we interact with this world? So the Buddha, in these cases, he's not talking about separate yourself. Even if you go off to that quiet monastery in the wilderness, there's some community you have to deal with. And even if you go off into the mountains by yourself, there are birds, there's food you need to get, there's water you need. You're always having to relate and interact with the world around you. There's no escape. Even though on one hand we know this world is ephemeral, it's like a dream. Is it really even solid? On the other hand, if you walk into the wall, you're going to break your nose. Both can be true at the same time. So these are the parts of the Eightfold Path, the second through the fifth, where Buddha is talking, how do you live your life in this moment? And then the Eightfold Path finishes with practice. Right effort. How do you meet this moment? Without effort, there is no practice. Sometimes right effort is translated as right courage. Can you be here? Can you meet this moment? And then number 7 and number 8 is right mindfulness and right meditation. So the Eightfold Path gives us a way to bring these opposites into action. It's not this or that. It's this and that. The universe and this world that we live in is unsubstantial. It's said that, what is it said, that 97% of our body is water. Most of what a cell is empty space. Matter is created by the joining together of, I guess now they talk about it in terms of quarks. We used to, when I was a kid, it was protons, neutrons, and electrons. these objects join together and matter forms. But within that matter is a lot of empty space. There's a way to be soothed by that empty space. The world is insubstantial. On some level, nothing matters. Zen Master Bon Soeng used to say, you're already dead. It's just a matter of when. And it will happen. We know that. And if we don't know that, we're like the Buddha before he left the palace. We forget. We allow our fantasies and delusions to stop us from seeing the ultimate reality. The Buddha woke up by caring about what it's like, not just for himself, but for those around him. So we use everything in our lives as a Dharma gate. Each moment is a chance for us to perceive. Each moment is the moment our enlightenment can be revealed. Again, quoting Zen Master Bon Soeng, he used to say, enlightenment is easy to get, hard to keep. So maybe a better way of saying that, enlightenment is easy to experience, but it's hard to live from. We grasp. We try to make it an object. We want to make it repeatable. If it happened once, I can do it again. But it's never the same the second time. Let each moment be fresh and alive. Even if you've done the task 40,000 times, when you're doing it 40,000th and first time, be there. Notice the subtlety. Notice how it's never quite the same. And if we can stay that connected, then it's possible to have everything break open. And we just reveal our true nature right now. Each one of us, even though we're just one piece of this one universe, we're all the same on one level. But look around these squares. We're all unique and quite different. Rather than trying to suppress that, don't be attached to it, but open to it and give it away. Oftentimes at the end of Buddhist ceremonies, there's a ceremony of merit. And in Zen ceremonies, we offer whatever merit that's been given to us by our actions, we offer that to you. We give it away. The more we can give it away, the more we can be open and have room for this moment. Because really, our life is only this moment. The past is a memory. Where is it? The future is a fantasy. Right now, we're alive. Be here. Do it. Respond to the circumstances and let your Buddha nature shine. And as you do that, you have the capacity to help save this world. We all know how painful things are. We have the capacity to help, but we can only help in this moment. Be alive, be present, and give it away. Thank you very much.